I talk about the 3 Ps when I'm talking with my clients: prepare, plan, and protect. I think often it's when we get into that protect conversation where light bulbs go off. This is risk management. You want to protect your business. You want to protect your assets. You want to protect your family. So let's start there and just have that conversation.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Next Mile. I'm your host, Kyle Van Pelt, co-founder at Milemarker. And today I am joined by Tiffany Irving. Tiffany is a senior vice president and wealth advisor at Mesirow Wealth Management, and she is the proud mom of 3 that keep her on the go all the time. Tiffany, thanks so much for joining the show.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Of course, we're excited to have you. All right, Tiffany, I ask every guest the same first question when we start this off, because I think it's a great way to break the ice to start the conversation. And I know you're a listener to the pod, so you probably know what's coming. But I have found after hundreds of these conversations on air and off air, everybody has their own unique path to this industry. Some traditional, some non-traditional. Some people followed in family footsteps. Some people didn't even know this was an industry they could work in. But what I've found is whether your path is traditional or untraditional, everybody has a moment in their life that we call a money moment, where the light bulb went off and you said or decided, this is the path for me. So what was that money moment that led you to having this conversation with me today?
Great question. We get that quite a bit, actually. And I would say there's not necessarily one moment per se, but my journey into wealth management started, I guess, a little bit in an unexpected place. I began my career in banking, working retail roles before joining a Chicago-based RIA in the late 90s. At the time, as secretary to the president, kind of all while finishing my bachelor's degree at night. So coming from a blue collar background and being a first generation college graduate, wealth management really wasn't even on my radar growing up. So money just wasn't something we talked about. But from the moment I started at the firm, got to meet the clients, saw what the advisors were doing, I knew I found my path. So I kept going and got my certified financial planner designation and my MBA, and now my certified exit planning advisor designation. So it's just, I've held a variety of roles and sat in many chairs across the industry. So I've got a deep respect for every member of the team and the work that we all do together.
That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. What was the blue collar background?
Yeah, just my dad was a mailman, and so my parents didn't go to college. My mom worked her way up in hospital organizations.
That's amazing. You're the proud mother of 3. I have 4 kids myself, and I think any parent would tell you that everything I'm doing for my kids is to try and make it to where they have it better than I did. And I'm sure you're doing the same. And I know your parents were doing that as well. I have a pretty similar story and background, not necessarily on the blue collar side, but my parents creating a better opportunity for me. I'm really thankful to them. And I know you're thankful because you're sitting in the chair you're in right now because of the decisions they made. So that's super cool.
Absolutely. I think it's just so much gratitude for how far we've come, but also having the conversation. 2 of mine are a little older now, so I talk a lot about that with them, that our goal was just to create opportunities for them that we didn't have. So it's been a journey. Yeah.
That's amazing. All right. I know you do a lot of work with business owners. Like you said, you're a certified exit planner. You work with business owners. As a business owner myself, I know I can be a pretty tough client on the wealth management side. I know that on paper, it's great. All of that's fun, but we're busy. We're tough to get a hold of. It's hard to get us for a review meeting. Calendars are tight. We're looking at your stuff, at 10:30 at night, all of that type of thing. So how have you found success in communicating and working with business owners?
Yeah, great question, because all of those things you just mentioned are so true. Very hard to get a hold of. I think it's the conversation that we have to have with business owners, though, in that we really talk about your personal plans and your financial plans are so similar to what you're doing in your companies. So understanding and starting with the why are you building your business? And so you said it's for your family and the opportunities there, but then thinking beyond that, maybe it's not you 100% know what your exit strategy is at some point, but everyone's goal is to eventually retire, sell, pass on to the next generation, whatever that might look like, whatever you're thinking today. So we say your business plans are so integrated with your personal financial plans that we have to be taking a look at both. So really kind of building in that conversation. And I talk about the 3 Ps when I'm talking with my clients: prepare, plan, and protect. I think often it's when we get into that protect conversation where light bulbs go off. This is risk management. You want to protect your business. You want to protect your assets. You want to protect your family. So let's start there and just have that conversation.
That's great. I know Mesirow is a prominent financial firm. Are you all providing expertise on the tax side for business owners, or are you partnering with tax professionals on the outside with them and they're trying to have you work in tandem? Because I know so much of that too is, okay, the tax situation's always changing and murky and wild, but then I'm also trying to protect, like you said, and preserve and grow. So for you, Tiffany, as you're working with business owners, what does that relationship look like?
Yeah, so our model is we've brought some expertise in-house, but we're not doing the tax returns themselves, if you will. So we really talk about building, and I align it with a board of directors for a business or a group of advisors. You should really surround yourself with that same board of directors as a business owner. And so we sit in that kind of personal financial investment planning seat, try to act as the quarterback where we're bringing in the relationship to the other advisors. That can vary if they're bringing the relationship to us, but we've got some attorneys on staff and estate planning specialists, so we will dive into that. Same on the tax side, but we're not drafting documents. We're not acting as trustees in that regard. So we are looking outside to build those partnerships and collaborate with our external advisors, which has really been a great model for us. Same on the insurance. So again, putting all of those people in the seat at the table with our clients. And I say it's not just collaboration, right? Because you're a business owner. You don't want to be the middleman going between all those advisors. The onus is really on us as a team to get together, have those meetings, collaborate, and come back to the business owner with the best solutions.
That's so good. I love that. So let's talk a little bit too about the ever-changing landscape. It feels like there's always something, it's just not set it and forget it when it comes to this stuff. You've got pass-through laws changing. You've got QSBS that everybody's trying to figure out. You've got all of this stuff. And with you being a certified exit planner, working with the board of directors, doing all of that, how are you quarterbacking all of the many things that I'm sure most business owners don't even know exist that can be such great ways for them to preserve and for them to take care and protect their wealth?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it comes with collaboration, right? We all have our different experience and expertise, but when we're sitting with those other advisors, it's not just one person's show. Our goal is to help the client reach their goals and objectives. So again, we look at, sitting in that seat of the personal financial wealth side of things. I'm looking for the wealth gap. If you exit the business, what does that look like? What do you need to maintain your lifestyle? Maybe you have changes to your lifestyle down the road that you want to make, whether that's traveling or philanthropy. Those conversations happen. Passing wealth on to the next generation, obviously, is a big topic of conversation. So for us, it's kind of building out the projections and the analysis to come back to the business owner and say, here's where we are today. In my role, I'm not looking to provide business consultation or working on, I know enough to be able to say, how do we increase your multiples so that you can get a better deal at the end? But while you're doing that and alongside those conversations, we also need to be looking at, how can we transition this wealth? And to your point, looking at the tax impact, whether that's the capital gain side of things. If you have estate tax issues that we have to worry about, how do we create liquidity for that? Are there opportunities through various trusts to gift assets away earlier so that appreciation is outside of your estate over the long term? So again, these are all conversations that are very dependent on what the goals and objectives of the client really are. And then how can we come back with them with solutions? And sometimes we're coming back, maybe we'll hear I'm not very philanthropic, but there may be opportunities through gift trusts, right, to create an opportunity for them to help transition wealth to the next generation and be philanthropic at the same time, because those are things they just didn't know existed. So there's a lot of tools in our tool belt as advisors that we just have to remember to educate our clients on and let them know what's available.
I love it. All right. You've mentioned it a couple of times, how one of the goals for a lot of those clients is transferring wealth to the next generation. Unless people have been living under a rock, the topic of the greatest transfer of wealth is just something that's talked about at every conference, every podcast, everything like that. But your clients are actively trying to solve this. I want to ask you about your thoughts on that. And then probably to the same question everybody gets, but I want to hear you talk about it too, of you're doing a great job with your current clients, right? But how are you connecting with the people that the wealth is going to transfer to, so that kind of a lot of your hard work of getting this set up to protect and preserve and take care of their wealth doesn't go off to somebody else after you did a lot of work in the front end?
On the front end, no, absolutely. I think a lot of that comes down to a couple different things for us, for sure. You're working with the creator of the wealth and their partner or spouse, for sure. Again, depending on their age and stage in life, how old is that next generation? when can we start getting them involved in the conversations? And maybe it's not quite time for dollar amounts, but whether it's looking at percentages or just having conversations about the history of the wealth and why the family went into the business they went into. A lot of that sometimes doesn't get shared just in the daily activities around your home. So kind of having those conversations, again, if the family's philanthropic, whether it's family foundations or donor advised funds, where we talk about, that's a great way to get the next generation involved. From a team perspective too, we're looking at making sure that our advisors or, our new advisors who are coming on board, I think you have to have a team that meets your clients where they are. I'm kind of often surprised. I've been in the business for 25 years, right? So that experience and expertise is great. But if you're a 30-year-old, you might not want to be talking with your parents' advisors. You might want to be talking with someone, in your own generation. So making sure that we have a team in place that can talk their language, that we're communicating with them, that we're looking at and adding technology to our platform and getting them access to information, right? For them, it's not paper statements and paper meetings. We're doing a lot more Zoom discussions, what's available on their phone. They want access to everything yesterday. So again, just trying to make sure we're internally thinking about how we grow as an organization, as a team, to meet our clients where they are.
That's great. That's a decent segue into one of the other things I wanted to ask you about, which is everybody talks about this transfer of wealth happening where it's going to go to the kids, which, sure, at some point it's going to. Demographics, though, also say that women tend to live longer than men. So a lot of that transfer of wealth is going to go to women. And then you also have this rise, but it's not too recent. It's happened over many years, but the rise of the female breadwinner in households and female business owner and female. So I just feel like probably long overdue, but the wealth management industry is starting to pay a lot more attention to women and how to serve them and how they have different needs than what the industry's provided for a while. I think this is something you're passionate about. How are you positioning yourself to be a great wealth manager and leader for all of those trends?
Yeah, that's a big one we're talking about. You mentioned conferences. That's a huge one we're talking about at conferences. And as a woman in finance, it brings me so much joy to empower other women in reaching their goals. I think the first thing I say is women are not a niche market. We're over 50% of the population. Whether you chose to be a stay-at-home parent throughout your life, and unfortunately there's a disability or death and you're suddenly stepping into that role, maybe you were out of it for a number of years. It's, kind of a re-education, but we're trying to make sure with our clients too that both partners or spouses are engaged and involved in all of our financial discussions. I think for a lot of folks, and it's the opposite in my household, because I fall into that female breadwinner category, if you will. And my husband hates talking about money and finances, but I'm like, you have to know what we have, where it's held, how it's titled, what are the passwords, how do you access it, and just have a broad understanding. You don't have to be in the nuts and bolts of it every day. But so we like to make sure that the families are really engaged and involved. And oftentimes, those conversations we're really focused on doing holistic planning with our clients. So when we're talking about those goals and objectives down the line for them, we're taking a look at both partners. What are your goals? And usually they're fairly similar, but they might be prioritized a little bit differently. So those are conversations that we have to have. But I think you're exactly right. I think, again, with demographics, women tend to live longer. So that great wealth transfer is first going to go to the ladies, if you will, and then to that next generation. So again, I think for financial planners, I think the latest statistic I read is at a little over 20% of financial planners out there, certified financial planners is about a little over 20%. So we're trying to grow that number. We're making sure we have diverse teams at our firm. Again, not necessarily all women want to work with women, but in some cases they do. And you want to see kind of those conversations come to fruition. There's got to be that empathy, the talking about the planning, the kids. It's not necessarily all about investment returns and numbers.
Yeah. Do you think that the conversation is getting less and less about investment returns and numbers? I feel like the growing conversation has been trying to move it away from that, but yet at the same token, what I hear from a lot of advisors I talk to is the first thing people want to talk about when you get in it is like, how am I performing? How am I performing against the market?
Yeah, I think it's always going to be important, right? You obviously have to be performing well in order to hit those goals and objectives, but we do a lot of, and I know there's some conversation in the industry about, Monte Carlo simulations and the like, but when we do our projections, I say to clients two things. I try to be fairly conservative with whatever numbers I'm using, I would rather look at the worst case scenario. I want to make
Yes.
sure that we are able to attain your goals. I want to make sure that you're not going to run out of money. I want to make sure that if there is a major health scare or you've got some long-term care needs, that, we're accounting for all of that in our conversations, because the absolute last thing you want to do is leave them in an unhealthy financial position for the long term. So I think it's really important to kind of educate about the software we use and the planning that we use and the tools that we have available to tell the stories and look at those projections. I always do think investment returns are important, but again, just we have no control over the markets as advisors. I wish we did. So in some ways, if you're going to, as an investor, there's some level of risk you're going to be taking in the market. So the conversations around what level of risk that is for you and your family, what asset allocation really makes sense, understanding kind of what your expected returns are around that asset allocation. I think that's all an education for our client base. But for the most part, most of our clients appreciate that. And even in the volatile early part of this year, people would say, well, is your phone ringing? Are clients upset? What's happening? And I said, not really. There's always a couple for sure. But no, they understand that the markets are volatile, that we've stress tested their portfolios, that we know that there's going to be recessionary periods in the future, but we're going to stick to our long-term goals and objectives because we know in the long term, that's where the growth in the portfolio, and that's how you meet your goals and objectives. So again, I think it's a lot of education.
Yeah, it's great. So I'm thinking about a lot of what you've said. I'm thinking about how you're running a business yourself. You're a mom of 3. You're on the go. You're doing all these things. There's a lot that needs to get done for your clients. And I think you care deeply about serving them. And I'm thinking about the rise of technology and how that helps get everything done. But open forum to just talk about, is technology enabling you to get more done, or is it creating frustration where you're like, it's supposed to be helpful, but they don't talk to each other, they don't whatever else. And it has me spinning my wheels a little bit more than I care to.
Technology is a tool, I think, that benefits all of us. And so while there may be challenges along the way, it continues to improve. I definitely utilize technology on our team. We're always looking for ways to improve those processes and procedures. And to your point, make sure that we're serving our clients' needs on a regular basis. And so when we're looking at the different tools right now, we're using Salesforce, we use eMoney, we've got Holistiplan behind us from a tax perspective. So I think that's all kind of critically important and going to continue to be important going forward for our clients. It's working with, honestly, our younger advisors we're bringing into the firm. They're so great with technology. We're already leaning on them a little bit. Like, how can we improve this process and procedure? How can we change these reporting? It's amazing the level of knowledge they have in that compared to not only myself, but even some of our older advisors on our team. So in that regard, I think that's always going to help improve the client service model going forward.
That's great. All right. Talk to me a little bit about how you're growing. Are you working with centers of influence? Are you out there pounding the pavement, walking into business owners' buildings and being like, hey, I work with business owners? Like, how are you growing your practice?
Yeah, interesting. We have utilized our marketing team for sure, leveraging kind of their expertise to help us kind of build out more strategic, customized approaches to growing our team. And that really depends. Each advisor kind of has their own strategy, but I'm in full growth mode. So I would say all of those are on the table that you just mentioned. Obviously, we work a lot with our centers of influence and other advisors out there. Warm leads and referrals from them are, I would say, the second best. Obviously, client leads are the best that we get, but we do a lot of social media marketing, looking at digital lead generation programs out there, utilizing kind of LinkedIn Sales Navigator, Smart Assets. All of those are opportunities that our marketing team is taking a look at. There's a number of them out there. There's Schwab, Fidelity. There's some custodial referral programs out there. We're taking a look at them, not really utilizing them yet, but they're interesting programs we're taking a look at. Obviously, the traditional marketing kind of never goes away. Looking to your point, are you walking into businesses? Yes. Are we looking for conferences to attend where business owners are present? Yes. Building our networks in the communities that we serve. So I do that through, board appointments and the like. I speak on WGN for our Mesirow Mondays. We have a different advisor on each month there. So, we've got some radio time, some article placements. So we kind of are the full gamut across the board, if you will. And then, of course, obviously acquisitions. That's
Yeah,
another big piece we're paying a lot of attention to is we're always, seeking the right firm that might be a good fit for us via acquisition.
that's great. Fantastic. All right. Let's talk a little bit about the future of the industry. So I'd love for you to get out your crystal ball and talk a bit about some of the trends that you see happening in the space, things that you're paying attention to, things you're trying to position your practice for as you're growing and as you're looking forward to the future.
Yeah, I think a crystal ball. I wish I had that for the markets too. No, I think as we said earlier, client demographics are evolving. So that next generation is here and we have to meet them where they are. So making sure our client team represents who it is that we're working with is important. Consolidation is a big thing. I know you talk about on a number of your podcasts as well. It's accelerating across the RIA business.
Yeah.
I think part of that is a need for trading platforms or investment research capabilities, custodians. The regulatory and compliance aspect for us is quite great. So it's not necessarily easy to do that as a small firm. So I think whether they're seeking resources and looking for growth, or you've got smaller independent advisors or firms who are looking for their own exit strategies, trying to plan for their succession, I think is important. I do think, and I'm excited about the uptick we see in female advisors. Again, with only about 20 to 25% of us CFPs that are women, I think there's a real opportunity there as well. I'm always engaged with those conversations, trying to get more women in our industry for sure. There's always talk around fee structures and service models, what makes sense for your organization. So I think that's going to constantly change. I know that some planners charge, maybe they're doing project only or one-off financial plans, but sometimes they're charging hourly. Sometimes it's a fee for a plan. We're a fee only asset under management based firm. So I think that's one area. And technology is growing fast. So I think that's going to be an area that we need to pay a lot of attention to.
This podcast is brought to you by Turncast. We make game-changing content for fintech and financial services companies. Learn more at turncast.com.
Hey, this is Judd Mackerel. Thanks for listening to this show. I just wanted to ask you one question. What's your technology and data strategy for 2025? If you can't clearly answer that question, I'd love to talk. We are spending some specific time with select firms to really go deep and help you clearly answer that question. We believe that it's one of the things that often holds back firms from really achieving their potential, from really achieving growth, and really getting a lot of the things in the position that they need to be. Things that are holding up the way that you scale, like your workflows, how you manage data around your revenue, how you report all of that to your advisors, and getting clarity in all those things. I'm sure there's a lot of very specific things to your business that are really important as well, and we'd love to talk about that. If this is interesting to you, hit me up with an email. My direct email is judd@milemarker.co, and I'd love to hear from you, hear what you're working on, hear what your strategy is, and see if there's an opportunity for us to help you get more clear on that strategy in 2025. Thanks.
So I want to talk about consolidation a little bit because I know you all are in the mix on that. I've had some conversations on here pretty recently, but definitely off air, where that pendulum on consolidation swung really, really hard. There was obviously a lot of private equity money. There was a lot of dry powder that was coming into the space. But it seems now that the pendulum is maybe starting to swing back the other way a little bit. And all I mean is maybe people were taking those checks, but they're starting to realize that, hey, the grass wasn't necessarily greener on the other side or anything like that. So what are your thoughts on what's going to happen with consolidation? Do you think that's a small blip on the radar? Do you think that a lot of people are still going to continue to want to sell and move their practices to these bigger shops that are consolidating? Or do you think that we're going to see that kind of level out a little bit?
That's an interesting question. I think probably a lot of it has to do with demographics and how many people are looking at their succession plans or getting close to their exits. But we're a 100% employee-owned firm.
Yeah.
So we're not looking to become owned by private equity. I think we're looking for those smaller firms who really appreciate sort of that autonomy and the entrepreneurship model that we have. And we're very careful. I'm not in there doing the acquisition, so I'm looking at this from the advisor point of view, but we've had a couple in the last few years that have been smaller firms, but we're really intentional about who we're looking at. And we want it to be a good fit both ways, right? It's really difficult if you don't have similar values or culture. So we really want to make sure we're looking for smaller firms that fit with our culture. But yeah, it's an interesting question that you ask. And I've heard it go both ways. And I'm curious, there has been so much consolidation. I'm curious how much more is actually out there. To your point, it may level off a little bit. I think that's true. But I do just think for a lot of the reasons I mentioned before, it's much harder to have kind of those small 1 to 2 person shops where I think you need a little bit more behind your platform.
Yeah. I get that. Yeah. What about the potential trend too, where people are saying, yeah, it might be leveling off on buying that $400 or $500 million firm or something like that. But you're starting to see predictions that the consolidators are going to buy other consolidators, right? So maybe you're like a mid-sized one who's been scooping up firms, and maybe like the creative plannings or these really big ones are going to start buying the mid-sized consolidators, because for someone like creative planning, obviously I don't work there, so I'm not trying to make too much of a pass here, but buying $100 million firm for creative planning just doesn't really move the needle anymore with the A being as big as it is. So they've got to find bigger and bigger deals to make it worth it, if you will. So what's your thoughts on that?
Oh, I'm not sure. You'd have to ask Peter Maluk. Yeah, they're a big name out there. I've seen them expand quite a bit. There's Cap Trust, some others I think out there. I guess I would say that's not my area of expertise. So I don't want to opine on what their next moves would be.
But we can generically just use the big ones that everybody knows. Do you think that they're going to start buying other firms who've been trying to acquire the smaller firms, or do you think that everybody's just going to keep trying to buy the individual firms?
No, I do think on some level, the goal is probably always strategic growth. So if they're building out their 3, 5, 10-year plans, I'm sure they're looking at acquisition on some level to include that, rather than bringing on one-off advisors here and there. To your point, that's not going to move the needle for them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Let me give you a chance to shout out Mesirow when it comes to this. So I heard what you were saying of these are the types of firms that are a great fit for us. We're employee owned. We have this sort of thing. If you're the type of firm that is 1 or 2 person, you're looking for more support, why is Mesirow the place that they should end up?
Yeah, I would say a lot of that. We're an independent employee-owned firm. We're headquartered in Chicago, and most of our wealth managers are up in the Highland Park area of Illinois, if you're familiar with that. But we've got offices across the country. We're managing over $12 billion in assets for clients nationwide. One of the things that was really important to me, as I said, when I joined the firm, was the culture. We were founded 88 years ago by Norman Mesirow, and our firm remains grounded in his original visions, which is, delivering expert investment advice and holistic planning that truly serves our clients. We put them in the forefront of everything that we do. And in all our decision making, we're not going to make recommendations that we ourselves aren't investing in. So it's got to be the right culture fit for your firm, understandably. But again, I think it's why I joined over 4 years ago. Our focus on clients, our focus on our communities was really important to me.
That's fantastic. I would like to move into the final segment of the show, which is what we call the Milemarker Minute. It's a series of lightning round questions aimed to be lighthearted, moving away from trying to get you to predict what Peter Maluk or some of the really big firms are going to do, and get to know Tiffany a little bit better. So are you ready for the Milemarker Minute?
I think I was most nervous about this Milemarker Minute.
All right, here we go. I think you're gonna do great. If you could travel anywhere in the world you've never been to before, where would you go?
I would need 2 weeks, I think, because I would want to go to Tuscany and then down to the Amalfi Coast with my husband.
Yeah, that would be great. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. What is the best book you've read or listened to in the past year?
One of my 2 favorites I've had over the last year, I would say God of the Woods by Liz Moore. And I'm going fun books here because I'll shout out to my book club ladies. And then Lula Dean's Little Library of Banned Books by Kristen Miller.
All right. Those are good. Those are unique. I like it. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
What is the best flavor of ice cream?
Jamocha almond fudge.
Nice. Are you a mountains person or a beach person?
Beach. Something about being near the water brings me some peace.
I love it. What's the best road trip you've ever taken?
Oh my gosh, we've had so many good ones with the kids over the years. Most recently, although I was missing one of my daughters because they're older now, so the whole dynamic has shifted a little bit. What we just got back from a road trip to Maine, an area of the country I haven't spent any time in. So we went up the coast and did the hiking and the mountains and the Acadia National Park, and that was awesome.
I love it. All right, final question. We are in an alternate universe, and Tiffany in that universe does not have the career of being a wealth manager or financial advisor. In that alternate universe, what career does Tiffany have?
I think my purpose, my passion is always to help people. So it'd have to be a career where I'm helping people. I don't know, maybe a doctor.
Okay. All right. You did it. You made it through the
I made
Milemarker
it through the
minute.
mile marker.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your perspective and dropping some insights with everybody. It was a really fun conversation, and I'm glad that you were able to carve out the time to do it.
Oh, thank you so much. I enjoyed being here.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, that's been another episode of Next Mile. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you would, please make sure you click follow or subscribe wherever you're paying attention to this. And if you leave us a 5-star review, that would really help people who've never heard of the show before find great conversations like the one I just had with Tiffany. But until the next episode, enjoy every mile.